Alright, hopefully, this will be the final attempt at doing this, because I've done everything that I can. Without further ado, The Great Kingdom, and I was gonna do a lot more for this. I was gonna have artwork, I was gonna have background music, but I don't have any of that. There were circumstances. So, I'm just gonna do it as is. Long ago, there was a great country, and the name of this country is not important, but in its heyday, it was one of the most important, one of the greatest countries in all the realms. The story is about how one man, one ruler, took it from a small hamlet into a thriving kingdom, as well as the events that for a time caused it to fall. The first thing that must be known about this great ruler, this great king, is that he didn't start out as a king at all. He was a regular, ordinary person like you or I, and he loved to help people. He loved to help people find for themselves the thing that they were the best at, their passion, their drive, and he would help them to hone their skill. And when he had done that to the best of his ability, he would move on to the next person. Obviously, this wasn't a perfect system. This wasn't a perfect process, but it was as perfect as it could be in a world filled with imperfect people. The process was carried out many times throughout his younger years. Finally, one day, the people began to take notice after an enemy nation tried to take over the small hamlet. And most of the citizens, they didn't notice, but he heard about it from the start. When he was taking his evening constitution, walking around the border of the small hamlet, he noticed some shady individuals skulking about in the dark. People he didn't recognize. And in that day and time, in a small hamlet like that, if you lived there, if you were a part of the community, people knew you. People knew your face, knew your name, knew where you lived, knew your background. They knew everything about you. But these people were obviously not a part of the community. No, no, no. Which and the fact that they hid in the dark meant they were there for ill means, ill will, nefarious purposes. But even back then, in the small hamlet, the gentleman couldn't just take action. You couldn't go unprovoked after somebody. It was strictly verboten, very frowned upon. So he followed the individuals around, ready to strike when they went about their business, to the various businesses and dwellings that lie about the small town, small kingdom, small hamlet. For example, one young lady, it was reported, snuck into a jewelry store and took everything that they had. Another went about town getting metal parts and random components. And with each of these young individuals, when they were about to make their move, he would make a citizen's arrest and he would turn them in. No one in town ever would have known about this except for the fact that one of the ne'er do wells, one of the evil doers, went about the task of kidnapping the king's daughter. They made that mistake. And when he caught the man tied up the ne'er do well, tied his hands behind his back, and tied him to a chair. And the evildoer made such a ruckus that the king woke from his slumber. And when the king woke, he immediately ran to his room and would have harmed the rescuer, except for the princess told him all the truth. And the man was offered a reward from the king and was offered a meal with the king and the princess both. But the man said, "While I am honored by the request that you make of me, I have a previous engagement and must decline." And he did so with the respectful bow that one would do. And at first, the king was quite agitated and angry. No one had ever said no to a request like this from the king, and he was not happy about it. Um, but the king thought for a moment. He said, "This, depending on how this turns out, could be my successor." For you see, it was custom in the great kingdom that when a king was ready to step down, he'd look for a successor, a person of high moral value, be it male or female, and choose that person of high moral value. But in the kingdom's current state of morals, a person of high moral fiber was very difficult to find indeed. And he thought maybe he might have it. So he took his feelings and his experiences that he had witnessed that night and felt, and he wrote them down in a little book. This had long been a practice since the great kingdom's fourth ruler, and the purpose of these books were to help to educate the new rulers as they came in, so that they could learn from previous rulers, both from their successes and from their failures as they went about their daily business. This is part of what helped the kingdom do so well. So 2 days went by, and the king sent the guards in disguise to the man's house, not to talk to him, but to follow him, as his anger had subsided, and he wanted to have them to report back with what the man was doing and what was so important. He was curious, and he was so curious that it bugged him throughout the entire day. And all he could do was pace about in his study, running his hands through his hair, wondering, because the king had had many people come in and out of his life. No one before had ever turned down a meal with him and the princess. Never. It never happened. So, what could be so important? What could be so great that he had to turn it down? This was what was bothering him. This was the question he kept asking himself. And when the sun finally set, the guards came to the king and told him what the lad had been up to. And the king cried, for it was found out that the man had spent from sundown to sunup at the local temple, serving the poor, bathing them, feeding them, taking care of every need that they had, and he treated everyone as royalty. So 2 more days went by, and the young man was brought before the king in a private meeting. My son, I have summoned you because you deserve a reward for your great deeds, and you shall indeed have it. But first, tell me your name. The young man blushed in embarrassment. Oh, my king, my name is not important, but if you must have it, if you wish to know it, my name is Gerald Grindle, and I am the son of a smith. Then it wasn't long before he was crowned king of the great kingdom. The children were dancing in the street, and everyone was in a mood for rejoicing. Finally, a hush fell over the crowd as the king stepped up to the podium. My loyal subjects, it is my deepest sorrow to tell you that I am resigning as your king. And there was an exasperated cry as all of the people in the crowd heard the news. Some of the women and children cried in a great mournful screech. But the king put his fingers to his mouth and let out a large whistle, making everyone go silent. Then the king went on as though nothing had happened. However, I have found a suitable replacement. He gestured to the young man that sat now in his what used to be his golden throne. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Gerald Grindle, the son of a smith, and your new king. There was a massive hush over the crowd, and a loud, unintelligible murmur. And finally, a loud, roaring cheer. Then the king, with a tear in his eye, placed upon the head of Gerald Grindle the great kingdom crown. Fast forward a few years, and the kingdom was prospering more than it had ever been. And the citizens, who were all quite wealthy because of King Grindle and his leadership, they all met in secret one night to come up with a way to thank him for everything that he'd done. They talked forever until the sun rose high in the sky. Finally, they drew up plans for a great palace, that is, a great maze filled with everything, every bit of food that he would ever need. Each bit of it sown by farmers by providing who he had helped by providing them with a formula that helps grow their crops bigger in half the time. Other people who the king had helped did the same, and soon there was a new palace to rival any other that there ever had been or ever will be, which they soon put the king in. Obviously, they all smiled at the success of their hard work, at least for a time, but they had no clue the possible implications of their actions. Over time, the kingdom fell slowly into a state of disrepair. The people were starving, and the basic functions that made the city run come to nothing. And the people who once valued the king's rulership got angry, and they let out a large cry of rage as they grabbed all of their tools and weapons, charging the maze and tearing it down bit by bit, using the bits and pieces to rebuild everything which they had found in disrepair. When they finally found the king, they shouted, "Why have you abandoned us?" The king looked at them with a surprised face. "Loyal subjects, I did not abandon you. You left me here in this maze, and I could not find my way out." And looking at the king's face, it was clear that he had been plagued by worry. But now he was free from his prison and grabbed something to eat. Then he grabbed some tools and they rebuilt the great kingdom together. Now, in the center of the great kingdom, they built a statue of a golden throne lifted out lifted up by people to represent that in order for a ruler to be successful, they need the support as well as they need the support of the people as well as being present to view and hear the issues. And if you find the great kingdom, it is said that this statue still stands to this day. Now, that the story is over, which hopefully you guys enjoyed it, I want to explain the purpose of this story. I will tell you that while I pinned it to paper myself, the origins are a bit more complicated. See, I was out in the parking lot of Bernie's Home Repair, and all of a sudden, the man upstairs started talking. He told me this story himself. Now, the version that he told, I did not pen because it was much longer, I think, than the one that's there now. And to me, some of the elements I did not quite understand. So I wanted to clear it up for the people that would be judging this competition. And I also wanted to meet the word limit, which it just met the word limit when I turned it in. And it may have been a little bit longer in the version that I told you. Um, However, the statue is the most important bit. Uh, I want to explain the statue. The statue is of a golden throne lifted up by the people. I'm saying that the golden throne represents any ruler, not just one king or another. But in order to be successful, yes, you need a ruler. You need a ruler that is a fair and just ruler. And you need that ruler to be present with his people. That that ruler needs to be able to come down off of his throne and really talk to the people, see what they're getting themselves into, and understand what the people need. And the people need to be doing their jobs instead of criticizing the ruler. For example, okay, you are upset because the roads are not filled. Okay, have you, as a person, looked into whether or not you can fill the potholes yourself? There are private companies that do that. And for a while, Domino's did that. It was like, oh, yes, we did. If everybody could do that themselves, would it not be a better place? I'm not saying everybody spends their free time working potholes. because I get it. I don't get much in the way of free time. You can see that by my upload schedule here. But if you happen to have a day off and you see a relatively big one, can you not go and get some chip seal or some gravel or something to fill in that pothole so it's not, you know what I'm saying? That particular one. Um, okay, this is entirely different, but say a government program isn't meeting somebody's needs. Okay, did you as a person not, did you as a person have the ability to meet somebody's needs yourself? Okay, have you got a neighbor down the street? Can you provide, help them provide for themselves? Help them get back on their feet? We're a community. We're supposed to be linking hands together. And that's the way I envision the statue looking, is the people are linking hands, holding the throne up, not because they're slaves to the throne, because they can easily unlink hands and it can fall to the ground. That throne can fall to the ground and a new person can take that person's place. But you can easily link hands to one another and offer help where it's needed. That is a community. That is a kingdom. That's the way it works. That's the way it's supposed to work. So that is the whole point behind the story of the Great Kingdom, and that is the Great Kingdom in its whole entirety. Let me know what you think. Did it deserve to place? Did it deserve to make it? Am I tripping? Is this not as good a story as I think it is? Maybe I need to improve, and I do work on improving every day. But I'm gonna upload it here so that y'all can listen to it and enjoy it, and hopefully you get some enjoyment out of it.